Thanks again for joining me on the podcast. Today's guest is Yasmin Grigaliunas. She is the CEO and co-founder of the world's biggest garage sale. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and I started a conversation with Yasmin by asking her about her first leadership experience.
Oh, look, well, I'm the firstborn, so I think that there's naturally some sort of inclination to leadership for firstborns, right? And I'm going to claim it. I have to. And so my mum had me at 19 years old, and then she had my two sisters a year later each. So my mum was 21 years old, 3 kids under 3, and my dad kind of took off. So we were raised in Sydney, but we moved in with my grandparents. And so, you know, my nan and pop, who came from a very different generation to my mum's, were really pivotal in raising me. And my pop was a bank manager and really hard worker. And so I think that I ended up soaking up all of this essence of his values, combined with my mum's need to work to support the family. And I think that I was just always going to end up being a leader of some sort in whatever role it was that I took on. And look, you know, mum always taught us to be strong, and I'm using her words, stronger than her, take a different path to her, don't, you know, get married young, don't have children young, go out and be who you are. And so I guess I always had this energized capacity to want to do good, to want to achieve things, and to not necessarily be a leader for leadership's sake, but to be someone who could reshape the way we do things. And I was really lucky. I stumbled upon positions and jobs, and maybe didn't stumble, but maybe was led to positions and jobs that always had these incredible mentors who just made me feel like I could be whatever it was that I wanted to be, and that I could do whatever it was that I wanted to do, or that they believed I could do. And they just embedded these strong values in me at a young age, and instilled this work ethic that today still burns strong after 25, 30 years in the industry of work. And, you know, I still have so much capacity to give, and want to be able to help give back, so that it really circulates around and people can do so much more than they think they can. And I think when you're in a leadership position, you have some level of responsibility to help others see what they can be.
I appreciate you being so candid. I'm really interested in that last statement. It's quite a powerful one, where leaders have this responsibility to do more than just the one task that they're on. And I guess that seeps into the work that you do now as the CEO of the current organisation that you lead. So can you tell my listeners a little bit about what it is that you do as a full-time gig, Yasmin?
Yeah, sure. So I guess you could call me, some say social entrepreneur. I usually call it more impact entrepreneur. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is, when you say you're a social entrepreneur and you're a female founder and you work in this industry of circular economy, a lot of the time you confuse people, or they don't really know what you're doing, and potentially don't take you as seriously as your business is. And so I always say impact entrepreneur, because it's really more representative of what we do in the world, which is really to build people, to create impact in communities, and allow for really change at the core of the way we consume, and we call it conscious consumption. So, you know, our company, we harvest or rescue dormant and underutilized resources in people's homes and businesses. We grab them from the market. People give them to us. They pass them on. They want to see them valued and be valuable in the economy. And we put it into what's called the circular economy. So we really are a circular economy organization that's mobilizing these products for good. And what does that mean? I mean, we've got it written on our shirts: people, planet, purpose. And so we really are in the business of building people. We're in the business of, you know, doing good for the planet. And through all of that, we're building a purpose-led organization that creates jobs and recirculates products in the economy, with an ability to have transparency at the core. So, you know, lots of people call us market makers. We really are. I don't even like the word disrupting, because it's got a negative connotation, but we're mobilizing and evolving this new way of seeing resale retail. And it's not your dusty products that you leave at the charity bin. It's really about bringing value into these products, and actually understanding the life cycle of products in their second, third, fourth and fifth life even, and ensuring that in all the resource recovery that we do, that really waste is a resource. Waste is a bit of a dirty word, but we're transforming that entire industry, not just for our own benefit. And this is the interesting thing about the business that we run is, yes, we're here to be able to create and make new markets and innovate in an industry that hasn't really had much innovation over the years, but we're not doing this just for self. We're doing this for shared wealth, for shared capacity. The rising tide lifts all boats. We're here and in the business to ensure that people, planet, purpose benefits from the resale retail experience, but not just all funneling into one big superhuman power organization, but really for a more shared and equitable approach to how we build this economy.
What do you think the differences and similarities between leaders and entrepreneurs are? And do you see a distinction? And two, does it really matter? And three, if you weren't called an entrepreneur, would that bother you in any way? You're a leader in the industry, so if that's not the moniker you've got, would it really matter to you? I'm asking this because, and I see it, I can feel it in the passion and how you're responding to my questions here. And I've had this same vibe from every entrepreneur that I've interviewed, that maybe it's not necessarily about titles. It's more about the subject matter and the industry in which you're playing in, whether it's IT, whether it's yours in the waste industry, for one of a different word, or a word that's not loaded with a negative connotation. But yeah, I'm very interested to hear if you do see a difference between the leader and the entrepreneur, and is there really a difference?
Oh, look, I don't think there. I hate titles, so I don't care what I'm called. You can call me whatever, and I'll answer to it. And even in our own in organization, like if someone comes into the business and they need to be called a certain thing, then like you can see it in my frowny face, right? Like I'm less interested in titles and heroics and me, my, I, and really anyone that we work with in our organization is an us, our, and we, like, this has to be, about collaboration and connection that's creating change through genuine human and, dare I say it, love connection in business. And the funny thing is, when I entered the workforce, and I was I was a pizza delivery driver in year 12, and I did a great job. And then I became a manager really quickly. The lady that was my mentor, Kerry, she must have seen something in me and gave me this huge opportunity to be a manager of a pizza store. And I was maybe 18 years old. It was crazy, right? So all of a sudden I'm thrust into a leadership position. And I really, if I could go back and do some things differently, I probably would. I mean, we all make mistakes. But as someone that had a leadership position really early on, it was never about the title. I would still be the first in or the last out and make the dough and create the pizzas. And it didn't matter that I was the manager. I would always want to get my hands dirty. I think that leaders who try to elevate themselves above in that hierarchical structure, they're just like, ugh, it just makes me want to vomit. I would never want to be in an organization that has these power play positions or titles that segregates you and separates you from those who are actually on the ground building your business. Our company is a company that has been built by community, and I might be the face of the company and the person with the CEO title, but the reality is I'm almost a little embarrassed at times because I'm not the reason this business is going and growing. I'm certainly a part of the wheels turning, but it's not because I have some sort of awesome title and capability to be a leader. I think that I was taught, and I know that I was taught at a really young age, if it's to be, it's up to me, right? And that's true. You got to work hard, and hard work makes luck. And they're all great quotes, right? Or philosophies of life. But I was always taught that, if you really want to be a leader, then act like a leader, whether you have the title or not. If you want a job, then go and volunteer and intern at that job, whether you're getting paid or not. You have the capacity to be whatever it is you want to be. The challenge we have in life is that there's all these hurdles in front of us all. I have hurdles in front of me every day. We all have hurdles. But if when we get up, all we see is the hurdles and the pain and the difficulty and the mountain we have to climb and all that stuff in front of us, and then we complain and blame and say we don't have the gear and I don't have the capabilities and I'm not this enough or I'm not that enough, then all that time and energy we're burning on the negative thoughts is actually what's stealing the joy away. And so for me, I guess I've always just expected that I would navigate navigate my way in life because I don't see the hurdles. And if I see the hurdles, I don't complain about them. And instead I'll go and look for people who can help make me a better person and draw on them in order to get over those challenging times. And I think it's just, the title is irrelevant. I was an intrapreneur and I didn't even know that was a thing for a long time with a company before I, did what I'm doing now. But the boss always said to me, act like an owner. And when he said act like an owner, I took it really seriously. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll act like an owner. And because he trusted me, it allowed me to really fail fast, experiment, learn things. And it didn't matter that I wasn't the boss. He just helped me believe that I could be and that I was, and that it was really empowering. So I think if you're waiting for a fancy schmancy title, then you're probably not really connected to the core of who you are and what it is that you want, because titles are actually very meaningless.
Most difficult part of being an entrepreneur, Yasmin?
Oh man, I don't know that everything's like, it's hard. And look, to state the obvious, when you are a female founder and the statistics for females are shocking in this industry. I said to you earlier, 3% of venture capital flows to female founded ventures globally, like 3%. That is an utterly disgraceful statistic, but again, I can't change it. But what I can do is be a voice for that. So, I think when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be really comfortable in the uncomfortable. And so you have to be a bit weirdo and crazy and prepared to do things that other people are not prepared to do. I will not paint a pretty picture. It is freaking hard work. It's soul sucking at times. It's challenging. It's like no pay or barely any reward for you personally. It is hard work. It's bleeding and painful and challenging and sometimes just downright confusing. But I would not change it for the world. I think that it's in that pain train. It's in that cycle of difficulty where you're in the deep, dark tunnel and there is no light. But there's still, there is. Your brain is going, no, I saw a flicker. I saw the flicker. Keep going. And you just keep going through the deep tunnel, not knowing if you're ever going to come out the end. For me, that's energizing. And no matter how difficult and dark and disgraceful it might feel at times, if you are true to the business that you're building and you know that you're doing something that's truly going to make a difference in this world, and you've got a team and a tribe around you that can be there when you might just be feeling the most challenged and you stick to it, I mean, gosh, there's nothing more rewarding than sticking it out and being that 10-year overnight success, right? Like, we're still only a few years in theory, 7 years we've been doing what we do, but 3 years as a company. The reality is this could go for another 7 to 10 years and we could fail tomorrow. But for me, if we fail, that I'm not a failure. My team are not failures. This is a lot of fun. So while it's tough and hard and not for the faint-hearted, it is the most exciting roller coaster ride of my lifetime.
How do you measure success?
Not with a pay packet. And look, I've come from the corporate world and I grew up doing things tough. I said before, single mom and lived with my grandparents. So we certainly were not, wealthy growing up. I guess when I was younger, I did measure success based on how high up the ladder can I climb and how much money can I earn and can I be successful. And I'm really super hard at working and I'm excellent as an executor. So when you work in the environment I was working in, the harder you worked, the more money you earned because you were just, you were able to grow a business for someone else within their business. And I was, at the top of my game really in the corporate world, earning all the big bucks. And would I say that was successful? Maybe once upon a time. But what it never did is it never struck the heart and it never achieved the emotive side of things. Like money, it just makes things easier. It doesn't actually make you happier. And don't get me wrong, I loved having a house and owning a car and having all the things and it was easier financially. But when we started to do what we do here with the world's biggest garage sale, which started off as a hobby just to help people, and I started to get that hit like, oh my God, we're changing people's lives. This is amazing. And people would cry and tell you all these stories, and you could see at the core that the work was meaningful. All of a sudden, the pay packet never mattered. And, you know, I did jump ship and quit my job, walked away from, you know, what was a great career and, you know, a lot of success on paper. But, you know, I often say now, my husband and I have never been poorer in our lives, not even when we got married. You know, we had more wealth going into our relationship as kids than we have now as a married couple of 21 years. But we never have felt richer in life, in that we're following our purpose, following our dream, executing authentically, and, you know, living a really vulnerable, true existence. It's freaking hard, and I'd love my bank account to be what it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, but it's not. And so for me, the measure of success, to come back to your question, is living your truth. And if I died tomorrow, I would have zero regrets for the choices that I've made. It's really interesting, because I look in the startup ecosystem now, and I've been a startup immersed for the last almost 3 years. And there's people who are angel investors, and they're generally people who have got good wealth. And I could easily have taken a sliding doors moment, stayed in the corporate world, kept making all the big bucks. We were independently, you know, able to do whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted. I could be an angel and could have been an angel investor, investing in other founders like us. What I would have lacked had I made that choice is I would never have experienced what I've had to experience as an entrepreneur, struggling and starving and going through the gritty, grunty times to really resolve internally and externally, am I making the right choices? Is this what the world needs? Am I building something of meaning and impact? And again, I wouldn't change the choices. And yeah, I'd love to sit on the sideline and throw a big fat check at a founder like me and a business like ours. But I believe that doing things the hard way is actually where you learn the most in life, and where you get that experience that can't be measured on a P&L or in a report. It's like a lived experience that I believe capitalizes life. And sometimes that might not mean you capitalize a business, but you're capitalizing something that's worth so much more. And don't get me wrong, I think our business, I believe, and am here and invested heavily in time and energy, and our business will be a success, but it's going to be measured on so much more than a P&L.
If I had to ask you to name your top 5, what do you think are the most 5 critical capabilities that an entrepreneur needs to have?
Well, in the Queensland ecosystem, there's a thing called GSD, which means get shit done, right? So an entrepreneur needs to be able to execute. You can be the best leader of all and, you know, pipe on about all the things that need to happen. But if you're not actually delivering and doing what you said you're going to do, then for me, I think that entrepreneurship is probably not the pathway for you. I think you need to have a certain...
So before we continue, for those listening, if you missed it, it was GST and GSD, which is get shit done. So
yes.
Those that missed it, I just thought I'd reiterate, just for those that may have missed what you just said. So go on.
Yeah, so GSD, get shit done. I think you need to, so hard work, execution, that all fits under GSD, definitely. I think you need to have a certain level of emotional intelligence, because it's really easy to get caught up in the ecosystem, they call it. And if you just get pulled along and you're not being critically analyzing some of the things that you get told by a whole swag of mentors and advisors and just people with opinions, then you could get caught up in the hype. So for me, emotional intelligence is definitely valuable as an entrepreneur. I feel like something that is not as common, but I have found really helpful as an entrepreneur, is the capability to sell. And it sounds awful because sales is a dirty word for some. It's like waste, right? And we are in both of those spaces. But I think sales has this black and white persona, but selling is a bit of a dirty word. I've noticed in the startup ecosystem that founders that are executing and seeming to cut through the most are those who have the ability to take their product and get it positioned in front of the right people at the right time. And so there's certain strategic levers you need to pull. So I feel like an entrepreneur that doesn't have the ability to sell should definitely be trying to find either a co-founder or somebody in the team who can take that body of work and own it, because you have to be able to put your product, regardless of what it is, in front of the right people and then back it up with honesty and integrity. And there are probably a couple of other things that I think are really important as well. Authenticity, honesty, integrity. I feel like they're really critical in any business. But if you've got that as an entrepreneur and you bring that all in together, emotional intelligence, honesty, integrity, be vulnerable, execute GSD, and be able to sell, then your product itself will evolve, and you've got to have no ego, right? Do not think that you are your product. Be flexible and agile to shift and listen. And the only other final thing I would say, that you absolutely must be coachable, which means sometimes getting told what to do, maybe hating what you hear, but being okay with the fact that there are people out there who have your back and want to help you grow.
Look, just 3 statements I'd like to get your feedback on. Entrepreneurs are risk takers.
Yes, definitely. Entrepreneurs are risk takers. I mean, you have to be able to be comfortable stepping out of what is normal. That's such a bad word as well to use, because you're creating new norms, and you have to be a risk taker to do that.
Yep. Okay. Entrepreneurs are persistent.
Yes, absolutely. Did I just snort? I think I snorted.
No, I think you did.
I did. Persistency. But and I don't know your next one, but persistency. But my favorite word that rhymes with that is consistency. And one thing that is, and consistent and persistent are probably very closely aligned. But again, even when no one's watching, even when it's difficult, even when you want to quit and give up, if you can be persistent and consistent, you will actually separate yourself and your team from the typical.
Now that's brilliant. That's not on the list, but that I could see why you would link the two. The last one here is entrepreneurs are innovators.
Yes, I feel like innovators is definitely very closely aligned to risk takers in a way, because to innovate is, again, maybe a bit overused at times in the industry, but I mean, it's about doing things differently, right? You have an idea, and this is the difference. Maybe an entrepreneur, I go for a run every day, and I run and I think and I meditate while I run, and I've got all these things going on in my head. And I think because I'm generally now very accepting of the fact that an entrepreneur, that's what I do. Like, it's what I'm good at, building things or fixing things from scratch or in disrepair. But it's the thinking, but then entrepreneurs execute. That's maybe the difference. I think we all are entrepreneurial and innovative, and we think these things. And I'm wondering if anyone out in your audience has ever seen a product or an entrepreneur come to market and then said to themselves, oh my God, I thought about that 5 years ago, and they just didn't do it. Now, being an entrepreneur is not actually about being the smartest and the brightest and the academic and the person with all the wealth who's been able to build this amazing thing. Sometimes it is literally just that person that has the idea, finds some friends to come on the crazy ride with them, and then executes on the idea. So when you're running in the morning or doing whatever it is that you do, where your mind is open to possibility, that is innovation. That is where you need to just go, you know what, I'm going to give that idea a crack. And that's the difference, I think, between an entrepreneur and the mainstream of those who are maybe a bit more comfortable going and working for an organization.
Sure. No, that's great. Mentoring, you mentioned this at the start of the podcast, and I'm interested to find out from you, because it's a topic that's come up in all the podcasts, whether they're emerging leaders or existing leaders or what I'm calling Australian entrepreneurs, that one, has mentoring been important for you and why? And 2, have your mentoring relationships been formal or informal?
That's an excellent question. And when I was, 18, going into this leadership job, in a pizza delivery store, I had no idea that my manager was my mentor. I wish I knew then that she was my mentor, because I feel like there's so much more focus now, 25, 30 years later, around mentoring and mentorship and accessibility to some of these amazing leaders who have paved their way. But Kerry was definitely a really good mentor for me, and I listened a lot to what she said and the advice she gave. And then I kind of kept doing that throughout my life. When I worked at a company called Video Pro for a long time, 13 years. That's where I was able to be an entrepreneur. But again, Graham, one of my mentors, really early mentors, just enabled me, maybe sometimes in a way kind of push some of those hurdles down initially to make me see that the pathway to what I needed and wanted was there, and almost was an ability to take the blinkers off. And I think good mentors challenge you, good mentors change you. And I really wholeheartedly believe that in almost every mentor relationship I've ever had, it's very much a mentor-mentee relationship, and that you're actually bi-directionally learning a lot from each other. And that have they been formal? Yes. Have they been informal? Yes. But remember, I said before, being coachable is really a good quality to have as an entrepreneur. I think being coachable is a good quality to have in life. And I love being told what to do. I equally love to go and take risks and make stuff up as we go. But I'm not scared to listen to the difficult conversations, whether they're being had directly with me or via resources and books and other things. And I feel like the early mentoring I had without realizing how powerful it was has definitely positioned me now to be very willing to give back significantly to those who also feel that I might have something to teach. Because I think the best mentors are not those that tell you what to do, but they are the ones who ask the right questions so that you can actually work out what it is that you need to do.
Question, are entrepreneurs in your mind born or made?
Oh, look, I'm a believer that anyone can do anything that they want to do. So while I was the firstborn and here I am, an entrepreneur now, I think if it's what you want in life, if you want to own a business and run a business and be the person that creates something from the ground up, I don't think any entrepreneur would sit there and tell you today that they've done that on their own. So I think some people are probably very naturally akin to being entrepreneurs, but I believe if it's what you want, then you can be anything that you believe that you can be. And it really does come down to one very powerful but critical and simple thing, is your mind. If you believe it, then you can achieve it. And it comes back to one of my favorite books of all time, is The Little Engine That Could. And just those words, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. They are so powerful, so simple, yet so cutting to the core of people who want to become entrepreneurs. You just have to think you can and then find a way to make it happen, but surround yourself with the right people to help you get there, because nothing great can ever be achieved alone.
Thank you, Yasmin. For those listening, this has been Talking Leadership with Eric Perez, your podcast host. Thank you again for joining me, and I will catch you all on the next podcast.